Hello everybody, welcome to Scorched Earth Toys at anymoon.com's review of Wave's WHAM 15000 SDF 1 Do You Remember Love completed model. This model was released in January 2007. The original release has kind of an icy blue finish, we'll take a look at it in a second. The January 2008 release, also 14,800 yen, has the words movie color version on the outer box, and that's a gray matte finish. So let's start with the first release. Here's a piece of line art. You can see the line art up above, the original release below. You can see there's kind of that icy blue finish to it. You can also see some discrepancies between the line art and the Wave, but you can also see that it's pretty decent likeness, especially given the scale and that it actually does transform. Moving on, in this picture you'll see the movie type version. You can kind of see it's got that matte gray finish. This is a little more similar to what Yamato ended up releasing also, except that Wave gives us little alternating dark spots on the paint, little squares of darker colors to give you that kind of multi-sheet appearance to the metal. Some people really love it. For me, I kind of liked the sparkle of the blue more than the very matte and dull looking gray, even though that gray is spiced up a little with those alternating colors. You can also see in this line art comparison, again, Wave did a fairly good job emulating the line art, but you can also see there are some weaknesses here. Okay, so what's in the box? You have a display stand base with the UN Spacey kite on it. You have a display stand arm that works with for cruiser mode, as well as a cruiser mode specific adapter. You have another arm and adapter that are specific for attack mode. You also get this little toothpick type item with a little hook at the end that is meant for transformation. I will have a separate video detailing transformation. Do check that out. It helps you get a feel for what this model has to offer. You also obviously get instructions that hopefully you won't need if you watch my other video. The toy has an MSRP that might make you think it's going to be bigger than it actually is. Here is a scale comparison for you. As you can see, in comparison to these other capital ship toys that are out there, it is quite small at around 24 centimeters. Now let's turn our attention back to the toy. And before I kind of get into how it handles, let's take a closer look at the detail you get. So there you can see the armed detail kind of going right around to the toy. And you can see close up. So again, this is the original release that has kind of the blue metallic tint to it. And that is my preference. I think it looks modern. Here's a good take on the rear boosters, and the paint obviously gives you a little fired effect, like there's been some burn there. Okay, let's check out how the toy handles. To attach the display stand, you slide the adapter up underneath this peg right here. So just like that. And then you bring the toy up. And there you go. Now it is on the display stand. Now, what is not at all uncommon in handling this toy is for you to grab it by the center, which will then split everything apart like so. So you do have to kind of learn how to hold the toy in a way where you are not going to be kind of forcing transformation mechanisms to pop open on you. So obviously this toy can be pretty fiddly to handle. Now you can get it back together fairly easily. But while we're talking about handling, you can see the arms kind of are sagging down. You might have even noticed on the scale comparisons I did that the display stand supports the center of the toy, but that sometimes leads to kind of an arched look where the feet are falling down and the guns are bowing down a little as well. So that is obviously not ideal. There goes those guns splitting apart on me again. So handling this toy is not a ton of fun. as you can see. But it's not really meant to be handled. Again, it's a completed model. It's meant to be put in whatever mode you want and then really left alone. As far as articulation is concerned, in cruiser mode, there's almost none to speak of. Geez, let's get this thing leaning forward a little so it's not so prone to popping open. Alright, so you've got your rail guns. You can swivel on the display stand. You can move the arms, which is a little unfortunate, and I wish they locked into place a little bit better. You can remove the arms entirely, and then there are their own little spaceships, which is, I guess, a nice little bonus, but what would you do with these arm pegs if you didn't have the arms on there is a question. There is a fair amount of die cast in the legs, and really it's this blue portion here and here feels like it's metal, but that means all the weight is really in the back of the craft. So that isn't quite ideal either. Alright, so let's continue on. Let's transform this thing into attack mode. After a fairly simple transformation, this is what attack mode should look like. And definitely check out my video to see the transformation. Here's a line art comparison for you, and I'd like to point out a few weaknesses that kind of stood out to me when handling this toy. First, the gun booms and those spikes off the top of them are way too long. The line art here actually kind of minimizes that, but in person it's even more obvious as the toy seems to go up over the shoulders as far as it does to go down below the shoulders. Next, the ARMD vessels are a little on the short side. The crotch, on the other hand, is a little on the long side, as are the shins, which kind of come down too far and the feet aren't long enough. Here's a comparison to the Yamato 13000 toy. In this comparison, I'm making both toys the same size. Obviously, that's not how it is in real life. But you can see Yamato's addressed all of those weaknesses and the gappiness that the Wave toy exhibits. Now remember, the Wave toy is much smaller, so these gaps might be a little less obvious in front of you, but still much more obvious than they are on the Yamato toy. And as to not be misleading, here's a scale comparison where you can see how the Wave ranks against larger toys, and obviously that Yamato is just towering above the Wave toy. Here's another scale comparison, this time to the classic Takatoku SDF1 TV version toys, and as you can see, the Wave is about the same size as the old 15700 Takatoku block system toy. Let's talk about articulation. The ARMDs can be slid back and forth. It's part of the transformation mechanism, but it might come in handy as you're posing the toy. Obviously, you can bring the guns forward to simulate firing. There's a hinge that comes out from behind the shoulder back into the gun. You're just going to bring the gun forward on that hinge, like so. Do the same thing on the other side. And they kind of click at the same spot, so it should be pretty obvious that you've got the guns in the firing position you want. So that's that. I'm going to put those back so we can look at kind of the arm articulation now. Okay. Alright, so the shoulders can't rotate. That's part of the transformation mechanism also. So they are stuck where they're at. But what you do get are several joints within. So you have a joint right here and a joint right below that to let you get a pretty impressive amount of elbow articulation. You also have a rotation point just below the shoulder. It doesn't quite make up. You can spin the ARMDs also. It doesn't quite make up for not being able to move the shoulders, but it does let you get pretty much all of the iconic poses that you would want from an SDF1 in attack mode. So that's good news. The legs, you can see I've got the feet pivoted out now. That's a little gimmick, so you could put them all the way in and give your toy a more straight up and down look. or you can pivot those outward, so that's a nice little touch. You can pivot the leg out like that, or make it a little pigeon-toed. Not really sure how much you'll be using that. There's no knees, there's no hips, so there's really nothing you could do with the legs besides that rotation and the pivoting out of the feet. So that pretty much does it for articulation. I mean, obviously these guns are articulated. The head, you can't move at all. Many of these things you might say, like, well, should an SDF one really do those things? And probably not for most cases, but it would be nice to have toys be able to do that in case that were something you wanted to do. Alright, so I've broken out the display stand. It pegs in via this slot in the bottom of the crotch. If it doesn't peg right in, that means you have to turn around your display stand adapter. Once on the display stand, if you lean the toy forward, the weight of those legs is going to give you problems. It's also going to cause the toy to spin a little too freely for you. So you are going to want to keep it somewhat upright. That's the best way for it to handle that weight. I find it has enough heft where it'll make this want to tilt also, make this arm lean in either direction. So again, fairly straight up and down is the best way to go. Since you don't have much in the way of leg articulation, it's kind of hard to give it a good flying pose, if that's what you were going for. So overall, perhaps a poor man's Yamato, although it's really too expensive for a poor man also, so inferior to the Yamato, better than many classic toys. Not bad, makes a good display piece, but not much fun as a toy. Visit anymoon.com for my full review. Definitely check out the transformation guide so you can kind of get a feel for what gimmicks go into that. And as always, thanks for viewing.